Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I, on behalf of the ITAT Bar Association Chandigarh, welcome you all on today's sixth webinar. And the topic of discussion today is the taxation of charitable trust. And our speaker today's speaker is Advocate Shri Tejmohan Singh, who did his law in 1994. And he is having a very leading practice. He is having a leading practice in the field of income tax with a vast experience and as specialization in appellate work before the learned CIT Peel and the ITAT Chandigarh. And he is a very helpful person, helping everybody who comes to him. And I also take this opportunity to congratulate the ITAT Bar Association Chandigarh with under the leadership of our worthy President Shri T.N. Singla ji and his team of organizing these webinars in such a successful manner. And the success is all because of the participants. So I thank them. Thank you all the participants for actively not only just hearing and just noting down the topic of discussion, but also participating and asking questions and making it a successful webinar. And I request all of them to bring more participants to join this webinar so that it becomes more successful. So thank you all. And now I hand over to Shri Tejmohan ji, today's speaker, to start his deliberation on today's topic. Thank you, everybody.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the kind words, Harry. I thankfully acknowledge the opportunity provided to me by our association to share my thoughts on this complex issue related to charitable trusts. This is indeed a vast topic involving lots of difficulties and disputes. I would be touching the basic fundamentals and concepts in this regard. At the outset, I may mention that I am not tech savvy, so there is no PPT in this presentation. To start with, there are three kinds of charitable institutions as envisaged under the Income Tax Act 1961. One is the Section 8 companies. Then there are societies which are registered under the Societies Registration Act and trusts. Sections 11 to 13 of the Income Tax Act deal with the income from property held for charitable or religious purpose. Charity begins at home, but should not end there. These are the words of Francis Bacon, a famous English philosopher and statesman who served as Attorney General and also as Lord Chancellor of England. The essence of the above quote has been fully captured in the definition as has been envisaged in the expression charitable purpose in our Act. More specifically, Section 250 of the Income Tax Act 1961 defines the charitable purpose, which includes relief of the poor, education, yoga, medical relief, preservation of environment, including watershed, forest, wildlife, and preservation of monuments or places or objects of artistic or historic interest, and the advancement of any other object of general public utility, provided that the advancement of any other object of general public utility shall not be a charitable purpose. I will come to this in a little while. Now, this was as far as charitable purpose is concerned as per the Indian income tax law. Now, as far as religious purpose is concerned, there is no definition in the Act. It has to be read in general to be an institution carrying on and propagating religious activities like mandirs, gurdwaras, church, mosques, etc. Religious activities are covered under Section 12AA and also under Section 1023C, IV and V, being notified religious institutions. Currently, several hospitals, schools, colleges are approved or registered simultaneously under Section 1023C and 12AA. charitable trusts and institutions currently registered under Section 1023C and 12AA will now be required to apply for validation or renewal of either the approval under Section 1023C or registration under Section 12AA, but not both. Currently, you could be simultaneously registered under 12A or approved under 1023C. But this has been done away with the new Finance Act, where you have to be compulsorily registered only under one clause, that is 12AB, either under 1023C or 12AA. The Finance Act 2020 has made far-reaching and sweeping changes pertaining to the registration and exemptions of charitable institutions. As already submitted, all the existing charitable and religious institutions, including NGOs, which are registered or approved under 12A or 1223C ATG, are compulsorily required to switch to Section 12AB for fresh registration. Please keep this in mind. The provisions of Section 12AA shall not be applicable on or after 1st of June 2020. A new clause AC has been inserted in Section 12A1 from 1st June 2020 to provide that where the trust or institution is registered under 12A or 12AA, it shall be required to make an application in the prescribed form to the Principal Commissioner or Commissioner of Income Tax for registration of trust within 3 months from 1st June 2020. That means till 31st of August 2020. And such trust or institution should obtain registration under 12AB. Thus, all existing trust or institutions which are registered under Section 12A or 12AA will mandatorily be required to reapply for registration within a period of 3 months starting from 1st June 2020 up to 31st August 2020 and obtain registration under 12AB. At this juncture, I would refer to the provisions of Section 1023C, which are somewhat similar to provisions of Sections 12. Under Section 1023C, there are various subclauses, but we will restrict ourselves to subclauses 3IAB, 3IAC, 3IAD, 3IAE, IV, IV, then VI, and VIA. Now, 3IAB deals with the university or other educational institution and not for purpose of profit, funded wholly or substantially financed by the government. This was in respect of university. Similarly, 3IAC deals with hospitals or other institutions for treatment of persons suffering from illnesses existing solely for philanthropic purposes and which is funded wholly or substantially financed by the government. Now, what does wholly or substantially financed mean? Wholly, everyone understands, means totally. Substantially here denotes where more than 50% grant is from the government, be it central or state. There is no distinction. This grant in excess of 50% has to be received every year for the purpose of Section 3IAB and 3IAC. For these two categories, that is 3IAB and 3IAC, there is no approval needed, no tax audit required, no need to apply 85% of the receipts. The only condition is that it is mandatory to file a return of income as per Section 139(4)(CE. And the grant in excess of 50% has to be received every year for the purpose of 3IAB or 3IAC. There is no other restriction in this regard. Now coming to Section 1023C 3IAD, which deals with university or other educational institution and not for purpose of profit if the aggregate annual receipt do not exceed 1 CR. Annual receipts here would include every donations, fees, etc. In Section 1023C 3IAE, it deals with hospitals which are existing solely for philanthropic purpose if the aggregate annual receipt do not exceed 1 crore. Now for these two categories, that is 3IAD and 3IAA, there is again no approval needed, no tax audit required, no need to apply 85% of the receipts. The only condition is that it is mandatory to file return of income under section 139C4 as already submitted for the earlier two categories. So difference between the first and the second one was that the first was funded by the government. Secondly, the aggregate receipts are less than 1 crore of the institutions. Now coming to categories which are enumerated in 3IA-D and 3IA-E. Sorry, we come to the next one, that is 1023C VI, which deals with university or other educational institutions and not for the purpose of profit. If the aggregate annual receipt exceed 1 CR, which includes donation fees, etc. Similarly, 1023C VIA, which deals with hospitals or other institutions for treatment of persons suffering from illnesses existing solely for philanthropic purpose if the aggregate annual receipt exceed 1 crore. Now, for these last two categories, approval is needed, tax audit is required, 85% of the receipts are to be applied, and of course, it is mandatory to file the return of income. Now we need to appreciate the points of similarities and distinction between 1023C's VI and VIA and registration under section 12. Approval is required by applying in form 56 for the purpose of 1023C, while it is registration which has to be applied for in form 10A. Of course, this has now been done away with as per the new amendment and as per section 12AB. Everybody would be registered under 12AB. Now, what were the basic distinctions between 1023C and 12? I will try and enumerate 3-4 of them. The basic distinction being that if the case of the assessee is taken up for scrutiny under section 12, the AO can look into the objects, he can look into it whether charity has been undertaken, not undertaken, whether objects have been adhered to or not adhered to. And if he feels that the trust is not being run as per if the conditions are not fulfilled as per section 11 and 12, then he can deny you exemption available under section 11 and 12 directly during the course of assessment for that particular year. But in case of 1023C, the AO cannot do this in scrutiny proceedings. What he has to do is, he has to file a report before the commissioner exemptions for withdrawal of the approval. The AO does not have the suo motu power to withdraw the approval. This finds mention in the proviso to section 143(3). So this was the first difference between 1023C and section 12. Now the second difference is in respect of corpus donation in case of 1023C. It is not exempt, 85% has to be applied. But again, with effect from 1/4/2020, corpus donation in case of section 1023C also has been held to be exempt. But earlier, for the years before this, corpus donation in case of 1023C was not exempt, while it was, and it is so in the case of registration granted under section 12. And there is no need to apply 85% of the receipts. So this was the second difference. The third difference is that in case you are registered under section 12 and following mercantile system of accounting, certain income has been accounted for in your return. Say you have an FDR which was for say 3 years. You have received interest on mercantile basis which has been added in your receipt. In such a situation, the assessee can file Form 9A before the due date of 139(1), stating therein that the income shall be spent in the year in which the income shall be received, or in the immediately succeeding year in which the income is received. So he can do it in the 3rd year or the 4th year, but here he will get deemed application. This clause is missing in 1023C. Therein, there is no provision of filing Form 9. Now, this was one example. Now, there's another example that you receive certain donations at the fag end of the year, say on the 25th or 26th of March. you cannot apply it. In such a situation, again, you can file Form 9A with an undertaking that the same shall be applied in the next year. So these were the basic differences between 1023C and Section 12. Now here I would come to another aspect, which of course has changed now. Earlier, if the assessee had approval as well as registration, it was the choice of the assessee, as has been held by the Jurisdictional High Court in the case of Bryant College of Engineering and Technology, reported at 108 taxman.com 196. It has been held that where AO rejected assessee's claim for registration under Section 12AA on ground that it had been claiming exemption under 1023C3AD, since assessee was free to avail registration under any alternative provisions, if more than one alternative was available, impugned order passed by the AO was to be set aside. So we had an option there, but it is not so in the amended provisions, as I've already stated. A fresh approval has to be taken, and a new unique registration number called URN will be given. But it is to be taken note of that registration will be given only under 1023C or 12AA. This will be applicable for 5 years. Thereafter, renewal has to be got done 6 months. This may be noted that it has to be done 6 months prior to the expiry of 5 years, meaning thereby the same is applied for renewal before the expiry of 4 or 4.5 years. It can be done anytime before that for renewing the already restriction or approval which we are enjoying. Now, there's another aspect. Now, where an application is pending or a fresh application is to be made, then the provision has come in wherein a provisional registration approval will be given, which will be valid for 3 years. The reason for is that at times charitable activities have not commenced, but certain purpose donations, etc., have to be received. Is to cover up such situations that a provisional approval is given, but it is to be kept in mind that within 6 months of the commencement of charitable activities, a fresh application is to be made for permanent registration of approval, or at least 6 months before the expiry of 3 years, which will then be valid for 5 years. Registration, of course, will be granted under Section 12AB. So in case of new applications, provisional registration will be given for 3 years, then complying with the various conditions, permanent registration shall be given, which will be applicable, which will be valid for 5 years. A trust or an institution applying for re-registration can avail the exemption under Section 11 and Section 12 from the assessment year from which registration was earlier granted to the trust or institution. It means that the exemption will continue and there will be no break in the exemption that the trust or institution is already enjoying. In case of provisional registration, the exemption under Section 11 and 12 can be claimed from the first assessment year in which provisional registration was granted. In other words, the benefit of exemption can be claimed immediately. As already stated, where a provisional registration was granted earlier being the new trust, the application for final registration is to be made at least 6 months prior to the expiry of period of provisional registration or within 6 months from the commencement of activities of the trust. Activities here would of course mean charitable activities. In any other case, applications will be filed at least 1 month prior to the commencement of the previous year relevant to the assessment year from which the said registration is sought. Application for provisional registration for newly incorporated trust also falls under this category. One has to remember another very important aspect. Where any modification is made to the object of the trust, which do not conform to the conditions for registration, an application shall be made within a period of 30 days from the date of such modification. Otherwise, provisions of Section 115TD will be retracted. I will discuss that later during the course of this discussion. Even 80G is to be applied again before 31st of August 2020, which will be valid for 5 years under the same conditions which have already been enumerated. There's an important amendment again in case of 80G. the list of donors along with their name, address, PAN number is to be uploaded in a form which is yet to be notified, but it has to be uploaded. There is a provision of autofill, just like 26 AS. Autofill provision is there and will reflect in the account of the donor who is to take benefit of ATG. In case the same is not uploaded by the donee by the due date, the charitable religious institution, which is the donee here, shall be levied a fee of rupees 200 for each day during which the failure continues. So it is very important and that this list is uploaded on the site. Further, the AO may also levy a penalty of an amount not less than rupees 10,000, which may be extended to an amount of rupees 1 lakh under section 271K. This is all I'm speaking in respect of ATG. I will just read out that particular portion of section 271K. Without prejudice to the provision of this act, the AO may direct that a sum not less than 10,000 rupees, but which may extend to 1 lakh rupees, shall be paid by penalty by 2I, the institution or fund, if it fails to deliver or cause to be delivered a statement within the time prescribed under clause 8 of subsection 5 of ATG, or furnish a certificate prescribed under clause 9 of the said subsection. So this was in general about 12, AA, 1023C and ATG. Now, I will come to the aspect as to why charity, how we can claim this approval and registrations. Now, owing to the aim of social development of the country, charitable trusts have received favored and preferential treatment in the Indian taxation law since 1886. The taxation of such institutions are governed by Chapter 3 of the Income Tax Act, which contains Section 11, 12, 12A, 13. Section 12A/12AA contains the provisions concerning the registration and the registration procedure under Income Tax Act. Section 11 and 12 contain the provisions concerning the conditions to be fulfilled by the charitable trust in order to claim exemption of income tax. Section 13 stipulates the provisions concerning a trust which are not eligible for exemption under 11 and 12. Now I'll take up point number 1, that is applicable conditions for applicability of section 11 and 12. In order to secure exemption under section 11 and 12, property must be held under trust. Besides, section 12A lays down that exemption under 11 and 12 shall not be available unless the following conditions are fulfilled. Number A is registration, which I have already spoken about under section 12AB now onwards. Then there has to be compulsory audit, where the total income of the trust or institution exceeds the basic exemption limit, that is 2.5 lakhs in any previous year. The accounts of the trust or institution is required to be audited by the qualified chartered accountant. And the audit report in Form 10B is required to be furnished electronically before filing the e-return of income under Section 12A, and in Form 10BB in case of institutions availing approval under 1023C. So first is registration, second is compulsory audit. Finance Bill 2020 has provided the time limit within which the audit report is to be obtained, and the time limit so specified is in accordance with the specified date as per section 44AB, which provides that specified date in relation to the accounts of the assessee of the previous year. Relevant to assessment year means date 1 month prior to the due date of furnishing return of income under 139(1). Meaning thereby, it becomes mandatory that audit report needs to be obtained 1 month prior to due date, that is 30th of September of every year, even if for some reason the filing of audit report is delayed. It is to be noted that due date is proposed to be amended to 31st October. This I read somewhere in place of 30th September. So the audit report is to be filed 1 year before the date prescribed in the section 139(1). Then next condition is filing of return under section 139(4)(a). where the total income of the trust before allowing exemption under section 11 and 12 exceeds the maximum amount which is not chargeable to tax, that is rupees 2,50,000. It is required to file its return of income in form ITR 7 before the due date specified in section 139. The due date specified under section 139 is 30th September every year, where the trust is required to get its accounts audited under any provision of the Act, and 31st July every year in any other case. Now, the third thing which is to be done is application of money. This is as per section 11.1. Income is to be applied for religious and charitable purposes. Section 11.1 of the Income Tax Act lays down that any income, profits and gains derived from property held under trust wholly for religious or charitable purposes shall not be included in the total income of the trust institutions, including society or any other legal, I'm talking about trust, this includes society and other legal obligation also, to the extent such income is applied or accumulated for application to such purposes. So it is applied or accumulated. The exemption is allowable under specified circumstances on fulfillment of certain conditions. In order to be eligible for claiming exemption, it is essential that the income of the trust is applied to such objects. A charitable trust or institution will have to apply at least 85% of the income to charitable purposes. If the income spent on charitable or religious purposes during the previous year falls short of 85% of the income derived during the year, such shortfall will be liable to tax. Voluntary contribution or donations, not being contribution forming part of corpus, will be deemed to be part of income derived from property held under trust. So it is very important that we should apply at least 85%. And in case 85% cannot be applied, then after complying with the various conditions, and if we can deposit the money in the specified schemes under section 11.5, we can save the tax on that. Now, next point is exemption for accumulation of income in excess of specified limit. This is what I was talking about. Where 85% of income derived from trust property is not applied and is not deemed to have been applied for charitable purpose, but is accumulated or set apart for application of such purposes in India, exemption can be claimed for the income so accumulated or set apart in excess of 15% limit, that is gross receipts, provided the following conditions are complied with. I'll just enumerate the following conditions. Number A, a statement in Form 10B to be uploaded electronically within the time allowed for furnishing the return of income under Section 139(1), notifying the amount being accumulated and the period of accumulation. In case form number 10B is not uploaded before this date, then the benefit of accumulation will not be available and such income will be taxable at the appropriate rate. The period of accumulation cannot exceed 5 years. The money so accumulated is invested or deposited in the modes or forms specified in section 11.5. Now from AY 1617, benefit of accumulation is not available if return of income is not furnished before due date or filing of return as per section 139(1). So return has to be filed in time. Now there's another problem which we face here. At times we get donations in kind. Say we've got a guinea, we've got a gold biscuit. In such situations, the same is to be applied as per the provisions of section 11. In case it is not applied, the same is to be converted within 1 year from the end of the previous year when it is received, and then kept in the modes prescribed under 11.5 to claim exemption. So this is important. If it is in kind, then it has to be converted and then deposited in the modes provided under section 11.5. Another aspect which needs to be looked into at this juncture are the provisions as brought in the statute under section 56(2)(x)(2)(10), proviso 7 and 8 with effect from 1/4/17, where the amount is received from unregistered trust, the entire income will be taxable. Supposing I get some income, a donation from an unregistered trust, then in such a situation, it is only up to rupees 50,000 that will not be taxed. Rest all will be taxed. Now, another issue which has been of debate was whether the assessee has incurred capital expenditure taken as application of income. No depreciation will be allowed. This amendment came to the statute with effect from 1/4/2015 and has been held to be prospective by the Honorable Apex Court in the case of Rajasthan and Gujarati Charitable Foundation, Pune, reported in 402 ITR 441, wherein it is held that in case of assessee charitable institution listed under 12A, even though expenditure incurred for acquisition of capital assets was treated as application of income for charitable purpose under section 11(1)(a), yet depreciation would be allowed on assets so purchased. This was the position which was prior to 1/4/2015. But now you cannot take the benefit of depreciation. This has to be kept in mind. Now there's another proposition which comes in mind. A capital asset is purchased for say rupees 1 crore. I raised a loan of rupees 75 lakhs and 25 lakhs I had of my own. In such a situation, it is only rupees 25 lakhs which will be considered as application and not rupees 75 lakhs because loan is not income. But an institution will be allowed to consider the amount of loan repayment along with interest whenever it is repaid to be application for that year in which it is repaid. So it will be not 1 crore, all which will be considered as application, it will be only 25 lakhs, the amount which has gone from my individual coffers. Then another issue which has now been settled by the Honorable Apex Court is whether charitable trusts are allowed to carry forward their losses, deficits of the earlier years for set off against their incomes of subsequent years. Till very recently, the revenue authorities were very consistently disallowing the charitable trust claim of carry forward of their losses oblique deficits of the earlier years for set off against their incomes of subsequent years. And thus such deficits were considered as dead losses. However, the issue of allowability of the claim of loss under section 11 and carry forward of the same to the subsequent year to be set off against income subsequent years is no longer res integra, and it has been set to rest by the Honorable Supreme Court in the decision of Suprose Education Society, reported in 303 CTR page 1, wherein it has been stated that the issue of allowability of the claim of loss under section 11 and 12 and carry forward of the same to subsequent year is to be set off against incomes of subsequent years by the charitable trusts. And this, even a Chandigarh bench in the case of Mukandlal College Society in ITA number 82 of 2016 decided as recently as 22nd of January 2020, directed the AO to allow the claim of assessee for set off or carry forward or brought forward losses against the earlier years. Now, another issue is in respect of corpus donations towards corporate funds. These are fully exempt and there's no requirement of fulfillment of stipulated criteria of application of 85%. Then there are times when there is withdrawal of exemption granted under section on the amount accumulated under 11(2). The income which is accumulated or set apart in accordance with the provisions of section 11(2) shall become taxable if there are 4 or 5 conditions. It is applied for a purpose other than charitable or religious purpose. It ceases to remain invested in specified forms. It is not utilized for charitable or religious purposes within the specified accumulation period. It is paid or credited to any institution listed under 12(8) or any fund institution, university, other than medical institution referred in clauses IV, V, VI, VI6 of section 1023C. Under any of the aforesaid circumstances, the amount involved shall be deemed to be the income of the previous year, in which it is so misapplied or ceases to be accumulated or ceases to remain invested or is credited or paid or the previous year immediately following the expiry of specified accumulation. Now, can a charitable trust carry on business? This has been answered in the provisions of 11.4a and 11.4a. Julius Roosevelt stated, benevolence today has become altogether too huge an undertaking to be conducted otherwise than on business lines. As such, there is no prohibition on the charitable trust carrying on a business. A charitable trust can be settled in relation to any property, including a business undertaking. The income from such business shall also qualify for exemption, provided the other conditions of section 11 and 12 are fulfilled. I will not delve much on this, just that I may submit here that the income of the trust, being profits and gains of the business, shall not qualify for exemption unless, this may be noted, unless the business is incidental to the attainment of the objects of the trust, and separate books of accounts are maintained in respect of such businesses as per section 11.4a. So it should be incidental and separate books should be maintained. The decision of Thanti Trust is applicable in such circumstances, 247 ITS 785. And another decision of Bharat Diamond Boards reported in 126 Taxman 365 Supreme Court, wherein it is said that the primary or dominant purpose of the institution is charitable, and another which by itself may not be charitable but is merely ancillary, you will be entitled to registration and you will continue to be considered a charitable institution. Example can be of a school wherein the school is being run by the entity which runs a canteen, runs buses, runs a library. These all come under the ancillary activities, and as such, they are covered under the registration clause. In the beginning, I refer to section 215, and the proviso was to be read in respect of any other object of general public utility. There's just one thing which has to be seen over here is that the proviso reads that the advancement of any other object of general public utility shall not be charitable purpose if it involves carrying off of any activity in the nature of trade, commerce or business, or any activity or rendering any service in relation to any trade, commerce or business for a cess or fee or any other consideration, irrespective of the nature of use of application or retention of the income from such activity, unless such activity is undertaken in the course of actual carrying on such advancement. And the second condition is important. The aggregate receipts from such activity or activities during the previous year do not exceed 20% of the total receipts. So, in case the total fees, cess or any other consideration exceeds 20% of the total receipts, you will not be considered to be carrying on charitable activities. So one has to limit the fees, cess or any other consideration to below 20%. There's another question that arises in case, in respect of section 10 income. In here also, the question which arises here, whether the amount of income which is exempt under section 10, that has also to be applied. The answer is yes, except agricultural income. Every other income, if you have received under section 10, which is otherwise exempt, has to be applied. Then section 11(1)(a) deals with the exemption in relation to capital gains. Again, capital gains is to be calculated on commercial basis in this situation, in the case of charitable purposes, on commercial lines, being that the net consideration has to be applied or it has to be used in the purchase of capital assets. You will not get the benefit of indexation. Please get that very clear. No indexation in respect of charitable institutions, but on commercial basis, you shall be allowed the application. Then the next issue has been whether new capital asset includes FDRs. While examining this question, the board has clarified that investment of net consideration in FDR with bank for a period of 6 months or above would be regarded as utilization of the net consideration for acquisition of another capital asset within the meaning of 11(1)(a). So this was an old circular of 1975, which has been referred to in this compilation. Now I come to the trusts which are not eligible for exemption under section 13. Following trusts are not eligible for exemption under section 11 and 12. a trust for private religious purpose which ensures no public benefit. This is section 13(1)(a). Then the charitable trust created or established after 1962 for the benefit of any particular religious community or caste other than scheduled tribes. This is 13(1)(b). Then 13(1)(c), which is being applied these days very regularly by the AOs. A trust or institution for charitable or religious purposes, if any part of its income or property is used or applied or inured directly or indirectly for the benefit of the person specified under section 13(3), vis-a-vis the author or founder of the trust, a substantial contributor whose total contribution to the trust up to the end of relevant previous year exceeded rupees 50,000, where the author or contributor is an HUF, a member of the family, a trustee or manager of the trust, any relative of such author, founder, contributor, member, trustee or manager, and any concern in which any of the persons have a substantial interest. So we have to be very careful and comply with these parameters which are enumerated in section 13 so that we are not denied exemption section under section 11 and 12. Now, when is it considered to be for the benefit of persons? If we pay them excess salary, we pay them extra rent, we pay them excess interest. These are the points which are enumerated in section 13(2). But one thing is to be seen, that it is only the amount which is considered to be excess or which is disallowed on which the exemption will not be given. This has been so held in 363 ITR 230 by the Honorable Karnataka High Court, wherein the loans were given in violation. They said the entire income cannot be denied exemption. It is only to the extent which was disallowed. Similarly, in case there is a car in the name of the trustee, only the expenditure is to be disallowed and the registration cannot be denied. For this, I rely upon 101taxman.com, page 247. These were the broad guidelines for charitable trusts. Now there are certain issues in respect of levy of tax at the maximum marginal rate, where a charitable trust ceases to exist or converts into a non-charitable entity. Sections 115TD and 115TF, as I've already submitted, which have been inserted with effect from 1/6/2016. These are specific sections. I would not delve much on that, but except that I would say here that there is a concept deemed conversion also. For the above purpose, a trust or an institution shall be deemed to have been converted into any form which I specified earlier, not eligible for registration under section 12 in the previous year if the registration granted to it under 12AA has been cancelled. So in case registration cancelled, you will be attracted with these penal provisions. Or it has modified its objects and not applied for fresh registration, as I had stated earlier, within 30 days. So if it is cancelled and if modification carried out in objects which has not been got listed again, you will be attracted with these provisions. Yes. Then there's a mandatory requirement of obtaining PAN for the trustees. Then there is a mandatory requirement of TDS deduction also. Now in the case of trust, section 40A IA is applicable. Even the provision of section 40A3 and 43 disallowance of expenditure exceeding rupees 10,000 in cash are also applicable. Now, lastly, I'll delve on the issue of anonymous donations. These provisions are in section 115 BBC. What are anonymous donations? Donations where there is no PAN, no address, no name of the person who's giving the donation. In such a situation, anonymous donation gets taxable. Maximum exemption which shall be available is of rupees 1 lakh or 5% of the total donation, whichever is higher. Meaning thereby you shall be liable to pay tax on the anonymous donation received at maximum marginal rate in excess of the limits prescribed. And the exemption limited is only to 5% of the total donations. These are not anonymous donations, total donations or rupees 1 lakh. But I may submit here that these would be not applicable to religious trusts because normally there is a Guptan only in Golaks, etc. And of course, the Income Tax Department has been given the power of survey also under Section 33A on trustees and places of activity for charitable purpose to see whether all these conditions are being complied with. Now, at this juncture, I would just enumerate a few case laws in respect of which, over a period of time, the law has developed and which has been adjudicated by the various appellate forums. This controversy of partly religious, partly charitable trusts stands to rest by the decision of Dawoodi Bohra Jama reported in 364 ITR 31, where it has been held that the SECI trust formed with both religious and charitable objects in terms of Section 13(1)(b), its claim for registration under 12A can be denied only in the case where such objects are carried out for the benefit of particular religious community. So here it was held that the Dawoodi Bohra Jamaat was allowed to be eligible for claiming exemption under 11. Then there's a decision of Ananda Social and Educational Trust, wherein they have stated that registration cannot be rejected only because there has been no commencement of activities, and which has also been held by the Punjab Haryana High Court in 389 ITR, page 148, and 114 taxman.com 693. Then lastly, I come to 390 ITR, page 547 in respect of improvement trusts, wherein it has been stated that improvement trusts are eligible for exemption. And as far as publicity of newspapers is concerned, printing is concerned, they are not allowable to exemption. So at this, I will come to the end of this presentation. There's a lot you can speak on charitable trust, but within the constraints of the time, I am here closing the webinar in respect of charitable trust as of now. Any questions and answers that may follow, please.
Thank you so much, sir. And I think definitely it's a Herculean task to summarize this very huge topic in such short time. And you've definitely done justice to give a good taster to the audience about the different provisions, especially the new amendments that have come in. We request our participants to kindly raise their hands. We'll be recognizing them once we are through with all the questions that were received online and during the session. At this point, we are closing the chat as well, so that any additional questions can be asked by raising your hands. So if you could start by answering the questions.
Yeah, there's a question which I can read of Shri Pankaj Bhallar. Explanation 3 of Section 80G states that in this section, charitable purpose does not include any purpose, the whole or substantially the whole of which is of religious nature. I've already stated over there, my query is that the substantial income of institutes is from religious activity, mandir, gulak, donation, and the expenditure on religious activity less than 5%. Will it be eligible for registration under Section 80G? Normally, registration under Section 80G is not given to temples and religious establishments, but this will not be that you will not be given registration under 80G. You will be given, and for this purpose, I think you can gain from that decision of the Mumbai bench. This is quoted in 127 DTR 180. It deals with the Golak donations, and wherein it has been held that exemption is available. So on those lines, you can pursue the matter under 80G. Education institute, this is of Mr. Naresh Singla. Education institution not listed under 12A, receipt exceeding ₹1 crore and surplus income more than maximum exemption limit, whether tax be leviable AOP or maximum marginal rate. Tax will be charged at MMR. It is better that you please get yourself listed under Section 12AB. CA Arvinder Singh. For AY 1890, a charitable institution under 12A has filed belated return after due date along with audit report in Form 10B. case has been selected, whether based on, it will not be allowed. I've stated that it has to be as per the due date under section 139(1). Suresh Kumar Bhuria, when the registration under 12AA be taken after incorporation of trust and the eligibility criteria for registration. I didn't understand, when the registration under 12AA is taken after incorporation, it has to be done only after incorporation. It can be before commencement, but only after incorporation. And the other, that I've already narrated, and I've given the case law also on that. CA Rahul Khurana, a trust transferred capital asset and then converted the net in FDR with the bank. Whether it will be regarded as utilization of net consideration for the purpose, it is right, it will be considered as application. What is the detailed procedure for registration vis-a-vis latest amendment and practical aspect application? Surinder Babbarji, I have a write-up on this. I'll give you that because that will take a lot of time. And plus, as of now, the form has not been notified as yet. Shri Atul, can general corpus be utilized for revenue expenditure? There is no. Can general corpus donation be utilized for revenue expenditure? If yes, then isn't it better to take general corpus donations rather than to take normal donations? General corpus donations have to be utilized for capital expenditure only. You utilize it for revenue expenditure, then you get also covered under that 50% application. Sudhir Saigalji, all trust institution earlier registered and shall have to submit. I can't read this. Can you put it down, please? An application for approval within the prescribed period as per. Now, if the trust is running an education institute solely for education and not for purpose of profit hospital, and now intends to opt for approval under 10 because the conditions as prescribed for are more rigid, are liberal, because if we pursue the substituted, it provides the time period filing is as under. In any, just move it up. In any other case, at least 1 month prior to the commencement. Thus, the trust which is already registered and intends to apply in the only for assessment 21-22. Sir, we have to go as per the dictats of the government which have come in. Next, Shri Subhash Jain. The foundation company has applied the registration to CIT exemption, but registration has been refused due to the reason that the management of the donor company and foundation are the same. Is there any judgment against the refusal of registration? I'll give you the judgment, Subhaji. I have a judgment on this. I don't remember it immediately, but I will. Magan Singhal and Company, how to account for items received in kind, which items are food items, medicine. This should be medical and food items should be utilized. Clothes and books can be utilized, but if you have in kind, so supposing you have land or some gold or something, that you should convert and utilize it accordingly. Whether restriction enumerated under section 30 applicable to institutions under 1023C, yes, they are. A lot of school students generally collecting money to donate, provide relief to poor displaced during COVID-19. They usually receive money in their bank account, and the same is then used toward charity. We are expecting that there would be a FAQ on this. That I had a word with a leading CA in Delhi, and he has stated this. Can CBSE guidance regarding salary be made mandatory on specified persons to decide their remuneration? That can only be a guidance, Nikhil. Next.
All right, so those are all the questions that are part of our online form and chats. We have a few participants who have raised their hands, so I'll be unmuting them one by one. We are recognizing Mr. Rakesh Kajlaji. Sir, please continue with your question.
Hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear.
Anji Rakesh ji.
Haji. A hospital is covered under section 23C IIAE. Reason being the receipts are below 1 crore.
Right, sir.
The society, this hospital received certain specific corpus donations for the purchase of the land. Land was purchased and it is shown in the balance sheet. The assessing officer made the addition of that donation receipt,
everything has to be taken together. There was nothing like corpus donations in case of 1023C. It will come in operation on 1/4/2020.
So next we are recognizing Mr. Anil Kalia.
Hello.
Hello, हाँ जी अनिल जी.
Sir, मेरी query है, the societies which are registered under 1023C6,
हाँ जी.
they are paying salaries to the members.
हाँ जी.
So whether it will attract section 30,
Yes, sir.
any amount of salary.
No, not any amount of salary. It has to be at the arm's length price.
Okay.
One should see what is the going rate in the market. Agar its going rate is 20,000, you are paying 1 lakh, then of course that is not justified.
Okay. So it means whosoever is paying salaries as per the market rate or as per the previous year, which is already been assessed, section 30 is not attracted.
Then one can take the benefit of the various decisions which I have already cited.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Right, sir. One of the issues I think most of the assessees face, especially under section 13(1)(c, sir, goes with deciding that market rate. I think if you have any
that has to be seen on commercial basis only, Nikhil. What do we do?
So next
but there are decisions to this effect, not one, there are many of them.
I think there's one by our jurisdictional high court which has sort of given a guidance as well to a lot of cases.
That's right, that's right.
So next I'm recognizing Mr. JP Dhiman.
Hanji Dhiman sahab, how are you?
Are you there?
I am there. I can't hear Mr. Dhiman.
Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you, Dr. Sahab?
Earlier it was not audible. Now it is audible.
All right, sir. Okay.
Sir, my query is that is it a trust which is of purely religious nature, whether it is obligatory as per the amended law to get itself registered or not?
That you will have to, sir.
It is compulsory, you meant to say.
Hanji. Now, earlier was it registered?
Yeah.
Hanji.
Earlier it was a society rather.
Now you should get it registered at 12 AB, sir.
It is compulsory,
Hanji.
What are the consequences if a trust fails to register?
MMR, sir, maximum marginal rate.
Maximum. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Finally, we are recognizing CA Vibhor Garg.
Hanji Vibhor.
How are you, sir?
Very well, thank you.
Sir, the new provisions is कि you have to, once this trust is created, you go for provisional registration with the authority, right? Because there are no activities.
If it's a new trust or for which the application is pending, then it is provisional registration.
I suppose I have this existing trust which did not have registration earlier, but it was carrying on charitable activities. Then what will be the scenario?
You apply and बाकी पुराने साल खुल जाएंगे.
हैं? Listen,
apply करो.
Provisional.
They will ask for the date. When was the trust created?
Yes.
So once you get.
In India, sir, there are lots of trusts which are not registered.
We know that. That is the reason they are compiling this database now.
Yeah. Now, what will be the
once
scenario?
You apply in section 12AB for a provisional registration or approval, whatever it is, then in such a situation, they will give you provisional registration.
Right.
But at the time of granting you the permanent registration, they can always ask you, give us your objection, when did you start? They can reopen the earlier cases. That's all. That's what. That is the only detrimental thing.
There is a proviso to section 12, second proviso that cases if the trust is not registered earlier and then now it is registered, and then on this ground it will not be 148 will not be done. This is the proviso in the.
Sir, we will take benefit of that in case you are covered in that.
But now we have. My question is, we have to go for provisional registration also for this.
You have to go in
for permanent registration.
No. In case you are not registered earlier, then it has to be provisional first.
It has to be provisional. Second question, sir. I have a second question also.
Haji.
Sir, there are a lot of trusts, Gurdwara hain, mandir bhi hain. They are having land, and they are cultivating the land. They are selling partial of their produce in the market and partial they are consuming in their further activities. गेहूं होगी वो उन्होंने लंगर में बरत ली.
हाँ जी.
कैटल रखी हुई है, उनका दूध इस्तेमाल कर लिया, कुछ बेच दिया. तो डू वी नीड टू काउंट फॉर दैट आल्सो, जो हमने इस्तेमाल कर लिया?
नहीं, ऐसा है इसमें. इन सच ए केस जो आपने यूटिलाइज कर लिया वो तो कर लिया यूटिलाइज. There was a case of Chandigarh bench only. In this case, they have sent the matter back to the commissioner to see it in this regard only, because these are the actual facts what you are talking about. Therein, the observation of the bench was that in such a situation where half is being utilized, half is being sold, it may be termed to be a business. And I said, no, that is not a business. So said, already let the commissioner give a finding on that. So as of now, there is no hard and fast rule for this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Welcome.
Today, joining us for the webinar is also very revered and respected member of our professional community, Madam Ranu Jain ji.
Good evening, ma'am. I can't hear you. Please unmute her.
Ma'am, there's some audio issue at your end. Can you check? She's unmuted, but
I can't hear her.
No, I think there is an audio issue at their end. Just a second. Yes, ma'am. Can you try now? No, there's some issue with the audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
Namaste, everybody.
No,
Good evening.
Now we can't hear you. Again, can't hear you.
Now she's audible. Now ma'am is audible.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
जैसे कि I'm not very tech savvy, मुझे नहीं समझ में आता ये सब क्या होता है, कभी बंद हो जाता है, कभी खुल जाता है. But anyways, good evening everyone, and it is always a pleasure to meet so many Chandigarh people once एक साथ सारे के सारे. And Tej Mohan ji, congratulations. आपने बहुत अच्छे से very lucidly you have explained all things, and you very well know this topic is too close to my heart. सारे orders लिखवाए हुए हैं. I remember आप बहुत सारे charitable trust के cases लेकर आते थे, and मैं यहाँ आपको बताती भी हूँ कि अगर मेरे सारे cases का analysis किया जाएगा तो 50% तो trust होगा ही होगा.
बिल्कुल सही है मैम. We have been learning from you only.
Oh no, I am learning from you actually. But थोड़ा सा I just wanted something more on 115 TD क्योंकि those are very draconian provisions.
That's right, ma'am.
बहुत भारी इफेक्ट आने वाला है. एंड अभी मैं थोड़ा सा स्टडी कर रही थी जो ये नए अमेंडमेंट्स आए हैं. somehow मेरी ऑब्जर्वेशन ये कहती है कि अगर आप अपने पुराने रजिस्ट्रेशन को कन्वर्ट नहीं कराते हो 12AB में, यू जस्ट गिव इट अ थॉट. हम कभी बाद में बात करेंगे इस बारे में, बट ऑल शुड नो कि अगर हम उसको कन्वर्ट नहीं कराते हैं तो can the section 115A TD be applied there? No, because section में कहीं नहीं आ रहा है. तो क्या होगा अगर मैं अपना अभी 12A का मेरे पास रजिस्ट्रेशन है, मैं उसको कन्वर्ट नहीं कराती 12AB में, तो क्या होगा? वो MMR 10 वो 56 to 10 एंड वो सब लगेंगे, लेकिन वो एक्रीटेड इनकम वाली कहानी नहीं आ रही है. समाओ या तो मिस हो गई है या मेरे को शायद पढ़ने में समझ नहीं आ रहा है.
नहीं, आप ठीक कह रहे हैं, उसमें नहीं आएगी इन सच अ सिचुएशन, बट बिकॉज़ दे आर स्पेसिफिक. अगर हम देखें तो उन्होंने डीम्ड के लिए 2 क्लॉजेस लगाए हैं.
एक्चुअली कैंसिलेशन है तो उसकी बड़े अच्छे से सिचुएशंस दे रखी हैं. कैंसिलेशन में एक्रीटेड इनकम का टैक्स लगेगा दे रखा है. लेकिन अगर मैं री रजिस्टर नहीं कराती हूँ या रिन्यूअल नहीं कराती हूँ अपने रजिस्ट्रेशन का, एंड वन मोर थिंग, अगर मैं प्रोविजनल को later on अगर मैं प्रोविजनल को एब्सोल्यूट या व्हाटएवर
परमानेंट नहीं कराती,
नॉर्मल में कन्वर्ट नहीं कराती हूँ, तब भी नहीं है 115 TD. I'm really sorry.
And that is my view also, ma'am. Because what they have been specific about the conditions which are there, and it is not inclusive section. If it was inclusive section, yes.
एक्चुअली। तो वो कुछ चीजें हैं 115 TD इज वेरी ड्रैकोनियन मतलब इट हैज वेरी
हाँ कि वो फेयर मार्केट वैल्यू में आपने उसे कंप्यूट करना है, कंप्यूटिंग एट फेयर मार्केट वैल्यू इज गोइंग टू बी वेरी ड्रैकोनियन
वाला ज्ञान और बांटिए किसी दिन।
ठीक है मैम, ठीक है जी।
थैंक यू निखिल, थैंक यू। मैंने एक दो पहले के भी तुम्हारे वेबिनार्स देखे एंड दिस इज गुड, वेरी गुड इनिशिएटिव एंड दिस इज द।
मैम फिर आपकी आवाज गई।
मैडम आपकी आवाज चलेगी।
चलो, I think we'll work on that, sir, again. Sir, there's one more question in the audience again by Mr. Anil Kalia ji. Sir, I'll unmute you.
हेलो सर, आप एक एडवाइस और करो। ये जितने भी मंदिर गुरुद्वारे हैं, दे आर मोस्टली सोसाइटीज एंड दे आर नॉट रजिस्टर्ड अंडर सेक्शन 12 एंड दे वर नॉट इवन फाइलिंग देयर रिटर्न ऑफ इनकम्स। अब लास्ट फ्यू ईयर से कैश डिपॉजिट के चक्कर में यहाँ 148 नोटिस आ गए हुए हैं। अब जहाँ सोसाइटीज हैं वहाँ एप्लीकेशन ऑफ फंड्स में जो कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर उन्होंने किया हुआ है, that we are not debiting to income and expenditure.
सर थोड़ी आवाज कट रही है, प्लीज सॉरी। थोड़ी लास्ट गल
मैं ये कह रहा था कि जितने मंदिर गुरुद्वारे हैं, मोस्ट ऑफ देम आर सोसाइटीज।
ठीक है जी।
they are not registered under income tax and they were not filing a return of income also.
ठीक है।
But because of cash deposit उनके 148 आ गए हैं notices.
हाँ जी।
अब now when we are drawing their books of accounts, तो उनके कई सालों में जो excess of income over expenditure आ रहा है, that is huge. Maybe they are having capital expenditure on those years. तो अब उस scenario में how should we go ahead?
So returns have not been filed. Provisions of section 11 will come into picture to this extent.
Yes.
Corpus which 11(5) ਤੁਸੀਂ पैसे जमा ही नहीं कराए हैगे। Return has to be filed in time.
नहीं, आपने बैंक में जमा करा दिए। They are all deposits in bank. They are saving account में या FDR में पड़े हैं।
Okay.
Those monies are in the bank account only, not in cash in hand.
Anil ji, let me apply my mind on this. I'll get back to you. Upon we can discuss on phone.
ठीक है boss, ठीक है, thank you.
All right, sir.
Right, sir. I think those were all the questions from our audience today. At this point, I'd request our co-host CA Parikshit Agrawal ji to kindly take over.
Yeah, thank you, Nikhil. First of all, one more announcement that I have to make today. That was there in our chat box also, but just to repeat that this was our 6th webinar that we conducted under this IT/AT Bar Association Chandigarh banner. And all our webinars that we have conducted till today and from now onwards, all those recordings would be available on our YouTube channel also, IT/AT Bar Association Chandigarh. And the bar also has our own website, itatbarchd.com. So the background material as well as the recording of all these webinars, everybody can have from today onwards. Everybody can have all those recordings and background material of all the webinars from our website also. So now formally on the vote of thanks. Today's webinar, the deliberation was conducted by our own Mr. Tej Mohan Singh ji, and we requested him for this very topic of taxation of charitable trust, which we all know that that's his favorite subject and is very close to him. He has argued so many judgments. One or two which I generally use and cite is one Kartar Singh Dukki charitable that is argued by him, I think, and the other one is the Tribune judgment, which is quite a landmark judgment from the High Court as well as from our tribunal, argued by him. And he has lucidly explained each and every portion of the taxation of charitable trust, be it section 11, be it section 13, the interplay of section 1023C vis-a-vis section 11. So he has lucidly explained, and at the end, the this very topic of that exit tax draconian under 115 TT, that he debated with Mrs. Ranuj, and it was very pleasing to see her at in joining our webinars. So we thank her also. And now coming to our participants, we are hosting these webinars not only for sharing of the knowledge that our eminent speakers have, and also for various queries that our participants are having. All the speakers have been answering to all the queries that our participants are making. And apart from the sharing of knowledge, we held our first webinar on 18th of April, and earlier to that we were sort of missing our bar room interactions also, like Ashwini ji's that coffee with Ashwini ji. We were missing Sehgal Saab's courtroom discussion, and all these things we were missing. But now with this, from 18th April onwards, this virtual bar room is on, and it is our endeavor to continue with this virtual bar room as well as this knowledge sharing platform also. So with this, I thank all the participants that have joined today, and we are so thankful to all of them, without whom this webinar could not have been successful. So I thank all.